Welcome to Navigating Evolving Relationships Part 2. I don't know if we have anyone in here that was here for Part 1. Grace was on Part 1 though, so thanks for coming back. Um, and obviously Keisha was here with us, but I'm really excited to give a Part 2 to this because I feel like our relationships get really crunchy and we need to know how to move through them in a way that is going to serve us in our highest purpose. For you guys that haven't been with me before, I'm Tanisha Sela. I am an empath. I'm an intuitive coach. I'm an Akashic Records reader, all the woo-woo spiritual things. That's what I'm up to. I hang out with my blog posts and my podcast, Life of an Empath podcast, and also lifeofanempath.com. You can check out all my latest posts and, the services that I do. But without further ado, I'm going to share the screen with you all, and we're going to jump into this yummy goodness about our relationships. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Perfect. So we really want to consider tonight our relationships. I mean, we really want to hone in on what specific relationships in our lives are causing us difficulty. I think that if you didn't have something going on in your relationships, you wouldn't be drawn to this topic. So we're going to focus on how unlearning, our theme for the month at the Harambe Collective, shows up in our relationships and how we can use unlearning as a spiritual practice, because it very much so is one. Unlearning correlates directly to release and also the power of choice. And that's what we really want to dig into and hold on tightly to tonight. So for the next hour, let's examine our relationships. I think for it to be really effective, you want to focus on a specific relationship. You want to consider your energy in the relationship that you are questioning, doubting, feeling disconnected to. And we hope to learn how to take more action in our relationships so that we are not just getting stepped on, we're just not uncomfortable. We can live authentically, but we can also do that with ease and through a spiritual lens, right? So you guys feel free to jump right on in. I work best when it's interactive, so feel free to unmute yourself, stop me, ask a question, and let's just have fun. It's Friday, right?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it better to do like a kind of long-standing relationship that has been evolving, or could we think of one that's new?
You can think of either, though. Consider what is the thing that I like to always consider, the thing that's the heaviest, right? What's taking the most of your attention, that's consuming you in a way that's most uncomfortable. But you can also consider things that you may have just some little butterflies about, and you want to think about how you want to best show up for yourself in that relationship. So I think either or.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want to set. Did somebody else say something?
Yeah, I had a question.
Sure.
Mine might be a little interesting. My question is about what if it's a relationship that you're still working out and the person has passed, but it's still like very heavy on you, and you want to like kind of work through that.
I think that's appropriate as well. I mean, it can be. I mean, 2020 didn't bring loss. Like, I don't know what it brought. Not necessarily saying that that is your specific situation, but I think we'll talk about some of our purpose in some of our soul connections tonight. We'll touch on that. So I think that is relevant to consider what that person meant for you and what that person was for you. I think I started to think about that at the end of last year when I had a loss. I lost my dad in the fall. And what I learned from trying to process that relationship was that he was more to me than I realized. And that he connected the family so much, and that he was my person in that. And I didn't even really think of that. Like, if you'd asked me that before he passed away, I would just say, our relationship is okay. But I didn't realize how much he connected me and grounded me to the family. And so in processing him transitioning, you know, bringing that top of mind helped me to move through that a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we can do either, right? So let's set a goal for clarity. You know, first we need to know what relationship we're gonna keep top of mind, what we're gonna focus on, and you also want to ask yourself, are you willing to shift in how you show up in that relationship, right? Because we stand at the center of our experience in this life. So if we have things that are always going well for us, then that's because it represents your energy. If you have a lot of negative things and you find yourself in the same boat in some of your evolving relationships, then that represents your energy too. So what is the relationship requiring from you right now? Where does it need your attention, you know? So call that out so that we can ask some really good questions towards the end and as we move through the conversation. So the things that we really need to unlearn in our relationships is one, dependency on the ego. The ego is always fighting for correctness and to be right, but the ego is always drawing from experiences that you've already lived. So if you have had a lot of negative interactions in your relationships, or you find that you keep attracting the same type of people, whether it be in friendships or whether it be in your relationships, um, then you got to think about, you know, your experience and how you will keep applying that same experience to your relationships, right? Does that make sense? um, because we often get in a survivor mode, if you will, in terms of applying the same rules to all of our circumstances, right? So if we're closed off in our relationships, or we have really firm boundaries in our relationships, we tend to take those same set of rules and apply those to all of our circumstances, right? Do you guys connect with that? So when you're very open and you have more fitting boundaries, you tend to have more ease in all of your relationships, right? But either way, we have to be less dependent on our ego and let the soul lead us in things, right? So we have to be willing to be more vulnerable in our relationships. That keeps us away from dependency on the ego and that rightness. We have to be willing to trust more in our relationships, right? And in order to do that, we've got to release the judgment, right? We got to consider judgment as the representation of how we feel about ourselves, and that as a manifestation of ourselves onto other people, right? You guys connect with that? So if you are very judgmental and that's the first thing that you come to in your relationships, or, you know, he did that to me, or she did that to me, or can you, you know, all that judgment, is because you already judged yourself in the beginning, right? And you're very critical on ourselves. And almost always we're more critical on ourselves first before we are on other people. And it tends to be a protection for us, right? So what we need to think about is how we learn to move past that judgment, right? Do you guys have thoughts about moving past judgment? Yeah. Good hair. What are your thoughts? Big good hair.
On good hair and judgment.
No, just judgment.
I think women, myself included, can be our own worst critic in terms of our own vulnerabilities, our own insecurities. And I think, at least for myself, when I'm really invested in someone is when I'm like most worried they'll find those things out, or they'll see those things, or they won't like those things I don't like about myself too, which usually, you know, isn't the case. But I think that's something that a lot of us, you know, worry about on a subconscious level, even if you know they're not valid things, or, you know, I think it still comes up.
Yeah, for sure. Judgment is a thing. And, you know, we're trained to judge ourselves, you know, even in society, right? You do something bad, you get in trouble, you know, you commit a crime, you get arrested, you get a judge, and, you know, then you get your punishment. And so we're trained to judge and punish ourselves first, because in that that judgment and that punishment, we feel that that's the way to absolve us from that negative part of ourselves, right? But all we really have to do to overcome our judgment is to accept, right? It's the only thing that we have to do is accept where we are and simply ask ourselves, can we be better than this action that we took in this situation, right? And if so, then from there, we have the awareness that we want to then move away from that way of directing our energy and then just simply direct it in another way, right? We don't need to feel guilty, which is another form of punishment, especially with women. We have this guilt, and it's like a normal emotion for us, but we don't need to do that to ourselves in order to move past the experience and learn to rise above it or direct our energy in a different way. And the fourth thing is avoidance. We have to stop avoiding conflict. We have to stop avoiding the uncomfortable nature of our relationships. And in stopping that avoidance, we can come into clarity with ourselves and in our relationships, right? Like, as long as you're avoiding something, that's going to be the pink elephant, the little murky water that's floating between you and that other person. But if you can, just call it out to yourself, whether that means getting it out in your journal, whether that means talking through it with someone that's, completely objective in the situation. Like, you have to stop avoiding the things that are bothering you so that you can make a change with them, right? So how do we release our negative aspects? What are the steps? Accept what is first. That's the only way forward. Spirit says acceptance of the current circumstances is the only way forward. And then we have to learn to connect with our highest self. And doing that can be achieved many different ways. Some people prefer meditation. Some people prefer to pray. Some people like to do yoga or journal or whatever it is that you do, but you've got to get clear with connecting with your highest self, because you need to get to a more objective place in your circumstances. So that means that you need to, get out of that ego aspect and lean into a more soulful aspect so that you can come to a different conclusion, right? And I like to say an empowering conclusion, one that's going to move you forward in your circumstances and not that's going to keep you stagnant. And then you've got to shed the exact things that do not serve you. I think sometimes in our relationships, we generalize things so much, and we're summarizing things so much that we really don't know the exact things that are bothering us, so that we don't know the exact things that are not serving us, right? So we've got to be very specific in our discomfort. So that goes back to not avoiding it to begin with. So then our soul families come into play, right? We got to bring some woo-woo into this because that's what I do. So we need to consider who our soul families are. Have you guys considered the concept of soul families, or have you ever heard of that term soul family come up?
I feel
No?
like as Black people, we know what that is, but I don't know if we know that word. Like, I feel like as Black people, we connect on like, that's my family, even though we're not related. But that was my thought on it.
That's good. That's not far off. Our soul families are not just our biological family, or not just our ancestral family, but they are our soul connections, right? So anybody that is our best friend, that is that person that gave us a job when we needed a job, that person that gave us that powerful message that helped us and, put us on a higher path moving forward, those are a part of our soul family, right? They are the people that we jump into this life with, right? So with your family, you said, hey, this is going to be my best opportunity to learn this situation. So I'm going to go through mama and daddy, right? And then we came down here together. So you have soul contracts with people, right? So it's not just our soul mate, but every connection that we have that's significant, that we have purpose with, that we are exchanging lessons with, are a part of our soul family, right? But we enter this life and we choose people based on our current level of consciousness, right? So imagine yourself just this little ball of energy above the earth, and you are with your spirit guides and you're picking out the things that you want to learn, and you start to choose people. But you choose those things based on your assumptions about life, your beliefs about life, your belief about yourself, and your belief about other people. So I introduce this into the situation so that you understand that if there is a lot of drama within your family, a lot of drama within your relationships, a lot of complicated situations that you always find yourself in relationships with people, it's based on your level of consciousness, because we can only attract what we are, right? That's what law of attraction teaches us. Can you guys get with that? Does that make sense? Yeah. So what we need to know is that we have to make better choices if we want better for ourselves, right? That's what we've really got to learn. So we've got to unlearn our current pattern of being, right? So let's talk about the reasons that we get stuck and we continue to stay in the same place in our situations. One, going back to just what I just said, the attraction point. We can only attract what we are, right? So if you are a super positive person, I guarantee you that when you come into contact with negative people, they won't be attracted to you very long, especially as you keep feeding yourself positivity, right? If you are a negative person and you have a lot going on, a lot of drama, you're not attracted to positivity. Somebody tries to pass you a book on Oprah's list, you're like, I don't have time for that, right? Because you can only resonate with what you are comprised of, right? The second reason that we get stuck is because we hold the current pattern in place, right? So if you're not changing yourself in the situation, you are agreeing to your current pattern and agreeing to the way that you're currently directing your energy in your relationships, right? That makes sense, right? Right. So we need to really think about how we're showing up in it. That's really the crux of how we get through our relationships and how they actually evolve, right? The third thing is that we move on instead of healing, right? Who can resonate with that? Do you guys connect with that? Just moving on from a situation, just like, it's not working, I'm out, right? But when you do that, you've only done half of the work, right? You have come into awareness that this thing is not working, but you missed introducing the why of it's not working, right? So what you do when you get up and you move on is you take that frustration, you take the same things that you wanted, you take your same level of energy to this new situation, and then you're expecting a different result, right? So we transfer our existing wounds to new experiences, and we can't really logically expect to get a different result, right? And then the last thing I would say is just anxiety. Like, we all get worried about what's going to happen. Well, if I bring this thing up with this person, is it going to be an argument? Is it going to be a conflict? Are they going to leave? Are they going to hear where I'm coming from, right? But what you have to understand is what your deepest fear is in the thing, right? Take yourself there. If they abandon you, then what? Well, you're already not happy because you had to bring up and this exchange, right? You're already not getting what it is that you're seeking. So why are you concerned about hanging on to something that does not serve you, right? So we really have to put that anxiety into perspective, right? It doesn't mean that putting into perspective is it going to hurt, right? It doesn't mean that we aren't going to experience loss. But if we're moving towards our soul purpose and we're moving towards a higher vibration, then we have to welcome that no matter what, right? So we need to know, where are your thoughts leading you, right? I've got some categories here: to stay, to doubt, to heal. And this isn't indicative of how every single person thinks, but this just is examples of things that come up when you're in different emotional environments, right? So if you are going to stay in this situation, you probably are circulating somewhere around, why does this always happen to me, right? Some version of, why is this happening to me? You know, why are these things going wrong? Nothing ever goes the way that I want it to go, right? And that tends to be a place born out of anxiety, out of insecurity, out of guilt, out of approval seeking. And if you are there, it only takes that person to satisfy that one thing that you're thinking of in that moment for you to stay right there locked into place, right, until the next thing happens. And they'll satisfy that thing, and then you'll stay right there, right? If you're in doubt, you get to the point where you're sort of pessimistic, right? You can't trust anyone. People are liars. Nothing's going to work out. People don't want to see you happy, right? That's honestly better than where you are in the emotional environment of insecurity, because you've allowed yourself to get mad at it. The only thing you have to do now is consider what the other possibilities are. But if you stay right here in doubt, you're likely to just withdraw from your relationships, right? So you come very closed off, more cold-hearted, and you just kind of get stuck right there. But if you're in a place where you're saying, I love my life, I feel good about things, I feel at peace with things are good right now, you are evolving, right? You are healing. You are getting to the place where you're going to experience that freedom of expression, where you're going to be more neutral in all things, where you feel like you don't have to necessarily react, right? Whatever somebody says about you, you don't necessarily react to that. You allow them to have their opinion about things. And you know that what their opinion is not really any of your business anyway, right? You let people be, and you want people to let you be, right? Also, if you are thinking like, I want to feel good about things, I want to love my life, you're getting to the point where you are evolving from a lower vibrational state. So that's still good news, right? Do you guys see yourselves in any of these categories when you think about your relationship or any other relationship that comes top of mind?
I have a question.
Yeah,
Is it possible in life to feel all of these things at the same time?
absolutely. It is possible to feel all of these things, but when you're in that place, that is the exact right place to seek clarity, right? You want to seek deeper when you're at that. That's the best time to call me, Keisha. It's like, Tanisha, I need a reading. Let's get into my Akashic records and find out what the purpose of this is, and then you'll clear that thing. So you want to clear the things that you're in doubt about. You want to clear the things that you're not sure whether you should stay or go, so that you can relieve yourself to get to the higher vibrational place when you're healing, right? So we need to talk about the stages of transformation. Do you guys know that there are 4 stages, spiritually speaking, of transformation? Here they are, right? First, you got to come into awareness, right? And know that awareness is really one or the other, right? You can only hold one state of awareness at a time, right? You can't think, well, this is both bad and good for me, right? At the same time, you're like, well, I know this is bad for me, but I'm agreeing to it. It's more likely to happen, right? I know that this isn't the highest place that I seek, but this, whatever, right? You can only hold one state of awareness, right? And that's how you think about spirit, right? Like if you believe in spirit, you don't necessarily unbelieve. There are circumstances in your life that lead you away from that belief, and you feel disconnected from it, but you still ultimately believe. Does that make sense? You guys get that? Like we only have that one state of awareness at a time. So the next step when you have awareness is you really start to take action from there, right? When there is new awareness, you have to take new action. You do better when you know better, right? So then you move into a place of self-acceptance. And self-acceptance is really about connecting to your internal landscape, right? You've got to accept what is going on with you emotionally, energetically. At this point, you realize that you are the center of the things that are going on, right? And you have to act from a place of changing yourself, right? And accepting the negative aspect and the positive aspects, knowing that there doesn't have to be a punishment for the negative aspect. You really just have to learn to evolve from it, right? Then you move into what we call appropriate action, or what I like to call clear agreements, right? And in that place, you agree to act only when it supports your soul's nature, right? Who you are in energy without all of the circumstances that your life has presented you with, and your soul's purpose or your divine designation, right? And then choice. Once you make clear agreements with yourself instead of boundaries, because the clear agreement is for you and it helps you direct your energy, then you start to make choices and you understand that the possibilities await you or are literally waiting on you, right? It's your choice to decide. So we really need to learn the power of choice. Really important tonight. I'm going to tell you guys something you probably never heard before. If you've never been with me, some of my peeps already know this, right? But we need to understand what choice is, and we need to understand how choice plays a role in our transformation, right? And then we need to ask ourselves if we really have infinite choices, right? What do you guys think? Do we have infinite choices? Yeah, Amber, you say yeah?
I want to say yes, but then also,
Like, is
but
that
then
a
I
trick
don't.
question?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like I feel like yes, but I feel like there are infinite possibilities. Are there?
Well,
I
come
don't know.
through,
I
Amber.
don't
Come
know.
through. Look at her. She come
I
teach
don't.
class with me. Infinite possibilities. Is she right?
Yes. I
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we have infinite possibilities, not choices. Absolutely. Right. We really only have two choices, right? The choices that we have impact our relationships very much, right? Two choices in our incarnation. We have to understand that first, you are your first choice, right? You chose your body and your circumstances to come through this life, right? And then our second choice is whether or not we agree with the natural consequences of our first choice, right? Do you guys connect with that?
Yes.
Yes. Who said yes?
Simone, I did. This whole thing about my relationship is like on this slide. I'm like, I chose myself and I had to deal with the consequences of that. And I'm still working through that and feeling guilty about choosing myself.
Don't feel guilty about choosing yourself. You are your first choice, right? And I always like to tell people with this that spirit was our first soul connection, right? So it's like we came through this life with everything that we need, but we're sitting here languishing with these, you know, negative relationships, with this indecisiveness, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be validated by everybody else in our life when we don't even know what's going on in their life, really. We just want people to give us the stamp of approval when you chose you, right? So whatever you don't like about your body, whatever you don't like about, you know, your hair, whatever you don't like about anything about you, know that you chose that because you believed that you could overcome whatever circumstances that you were presented with. You believed that you could overcome your natural consequences. That's what evolution is, right? That's what ascension really is. It's moving through a set of circumstances, knowing that one aspect at a time, you're getting through it, right? So know that that impacts our relationships really deeply, because when we disagree with who we are and we disagree with the consequences, we get stuck. That's how we get stuck, right? So where do we get stuck? We get stuck in not changing. We just don't change. We don't like change. It's scary. It's hard. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, we just are worried. So when we don't change, then we stay the same, because we can only control ourselves. We can only change ourselves, right? So we get stuck when we reject ourselves. Like, you don't get to be anybody else in this life. So if you can't agree with the choice that you made for yourself, then it's going to be a hard road your entire journey, right? And that's okay. Some people have that struggle their entire incarnation, but know that there is another perspective, another mindset that you could take on, and that lives within spirituality and within a spiritual perspective, right? We also reject the choices that we make, which means that we have a hard time accepting our lessons as we go through our experiences. So we're unhappy that we made this choice, this decision put us in this predicament, you know, it's whoever's fault or whatever. And that happens to everybody. We all get to a point where we get frustrated and when we're disgusted with ourselves, but we have to cycle out of that energy place faster if we expect to change our situation. Also, we don't create new patterns. We stick with the same ones that aren't working, and we don't define our agreement with ourselves. All right. So our typical route here is to set boundaries, right? Who thinks they have good boundaries? Nobody.
On some days.
Some days. That's better. That's better than
Very
Mondays.
bad.
I have.
Depends on the
Yeah,
person.
it's a struggle. Yeah.
Depends on the person
that.
for me.
Yeah.
Certainly does. Some people get past boundaries.
Yeah.
Our typical route is to lean into the boundaries, right? And here's why I don't even deal with boundaries even as a word, right? It's a clear agreement for me. Boundaries don't work because they are limiting, right? They limit us. It feels like a diet, right? So you're gonna not eat carbs for a week and you lose weight, and then somebody gives you like a cheeseburger, a full fat one or like a vegan one, you eat it and you back 3 pounds up just after your first bite, right? So they limit us and it's hard to stick to them. And they're really not for us, right? They're for other people. This is how we control other people, because we feel like we need protection from other people, and you got to protect your energy and you got to stay away from the energy vampires, and you know what I'm talking about, right? But if you're positive, that's all you need, right? If you're positive, nobody negative is going to hang out with you as long as you keep drinking the positive juice, right? As long as you say, people come in negative, you're like, oh, bless your heart. Let me pray for you, or, love and light. I hope it gets better. And they are going to be like, girl, so all you have to do is give yourself more of that. And when you do, you repel them naturally, right? And we are already covered by spirit, right? That's what we call grace. That's our divine protection and our divine love. We don't need to create stuff to keep people away from us, because you might very well be keeping one of your soul connections away from you with your boundary. How do you know you don't need that person? Especially if you're not even clear with yourselves, if you don't have a sense of clarity yet, right? Also, boundaries are a sense of punishment, which is why they tend to be temporary, right? So let's not take the typical route. Let's honor ourselves with a clear agreement and make promises to uphold our soul's energy in nature and do things that are going to support us in our soul purpose, right? So what's the path forward? Now I'm going to get real controversial here, but that's just what I do sometimes, I really feel like the path forward is, in one, releasing the need to be authentic, right? Fight me. Because I feel like with this new authenticity thing, and I just want to speak my truth, Tanisha, that's what my clients say, Tanisha, I just want to speak my truth. I'm just like, girl. But I feel like in this authenticity, we are still trying to represent a part of our ego, right? And what we end up doing is it becomes a form of frustration, and there's a rage that has to, like, we get fired up, I just want to speak my truth, and this is what I stand for, and this is what I do, and da-da-da. And like, it's like, if you need to declare that you're speaking the truth, then what lies are you living, I mean, I'm just saying, right?
Wait, can we pause at that for a
I
minute?
know. Damn.
What happened?
Say that again? Oh,
And then be like, on to the
Damn.
next point. Like, no, hold on.
So you just gonna drag us and then
Right,
just be
drag
like, and then myself, you gonna whoop us and then be like, stop crying. We gotta go to the store. Like,
right.
Wow.
Wow, please say that again.
We do, because the thing about it is, like, and just think about my predicament, right? Like, I'm an empath, right? So when you come to me, like, the first thing I'm telling you is, like, I like to start with what's going on in your energy. I like to do this thing called emotional landscape. So I give you the energy that's going on in your mental space, your physical space, the problem, the opportunity, and what's going to give you peace, right? So it's like, if you're saying you got to speak your truth, it's already out there, like, and you don't even have to be empathic to know when somebody is, if you're checked in, that when somebody is not being authentic, you feel that, because that is what keeps you from buying this product or not buying that product, or hanging out with this group of people or not, because of whether or not you feel like they're authentic enough. You know what I mean? So it's like, we got to get clear with ourselves, and you can speak your truth in ease. You know what I mean? Like whatever you have to say, you don't have to make some declaration in order to say it. It's like in that you're creating another boundary, so that you can give yourself permission to say something that is on your heart to say anyway. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't know. And also I feel like in that authenticity thing, we project our truth, right? We become projectors of our truth instead of just simply learning to direct our energy in another way. And I feel like in that other way is through courage, right? And the thing about courage is I love the energy of courage because it has ebb and flow, just like how energy is naturally. And so as you change your mindset and as you change your actions, right, you're naturally going to have increased awareness, and that means that you're going to be practicing new ways of being. You're going to be practicing um, being more vulnerable. You're going to be practicing telling people where you are aligned in this thing and where you think that thing is not for you. You're going to be practicing saying no, because we learned last time that that is just a whole complete statement. We don't have to say anything else besides no if it doesn't work for you, right? So we change our energy pattern in ease with courage, and we get closer to freedom. We get closer to our highest self and spirit, right? You don't want to drag rage and frustration to spirit, right? So on growth, this is a message that I channeled a while back about growth. And I think this message is so, so powerful because it speaks to the fact that we have to be the initiators of our growth. It says, third paragraph down, to be active in our growth means to look for the opportunity to initiate it, right? And so spirit is telling us we can't be sitting around waiting for, our situation to change. We have to look for growth, because in looking for growth, it holds the key to ascension and opens the door to all that is. So looking for growth keeps you on that path of seeking. And we are built to seek. We are born to seek. That's why we feel dissatisfied when we're not working in our purpose. That's why we're dissatisfied when we're surrounded by connections that aren't feeding us, but are draining us, in the need to vent all the time to each other versus uplift each other, and be there for each other in ways that are more positive, right? So we go closer to spirit when we look to growth. We mature as souls as we continue the pathway to growth, right? Makes sense. Do you guys have any questions?